Look, we are the first generation in history being priced out of our own neighborhoods while massive corporations buy up every single starter home in sight. If we don't change our strategy right now, we're going to be renting our lives from a landlord forever. We have to face the brutal reality. The old rules of saving 20% for a down payment, those rules are dead. We are being squeezed by institutional buyers and 7% interest rates. But look, there is a blueprint they aren't telling us about. Today, we break the cycle and we claim our piece of the map. Now, let's look at the numbers for a second because, the numbers don't lie. Since 1980, the median home price in the U.S. has increased by over 400%, while our actual wages, they've only moved the needle by a fraction of that. We're working harder than ever, yet the goalposts just keep moving further and further away. We see houses that sold for $200,000 just 5 years ago now listed for $450,000, and the experts expect us to just save more. But here is the real kicker, right? We aren't just competing against each other anymore. We are competing against multi-billion-dollar hedge funds that view our family homes as nothing more than line items on a spreadsheet. In some markets, nearly 1 in 4 homes is being snatched up by an investor who will never live there. They have the cash, they have the leverage, and they are counting on us to stay as permanent renters. Look, we've all been told that the American dream is a 30-year mortgage and a white picket fence, but for most of us, that feels like a total fantasy. When the average down payment is now hovering around $60,000 and inflation is eating our paychecks every single month, we have to stop playing the game by the old rules. We have to realize that the strategy our parents used, saving a little bit every month in a standard savings account, is a recipe for being left behind. But listen, we aren't here to just vent about how unfair it is. No way. We are here to pivot. We are going to look at the math, understand the market cycles, and figure out how we can use modern leverage to get our foot in the door before it slams shut for good. We're talking about house hacking, FHA strategies, and looking at property as a wealth-building tool rather than just a place to sleep. If we want to own our future, we have to understand the problem at its core. So, let's dive into exactly why this squeeze is happening and how we can fight back. So, we've all seen the problem, and let's be honest, it's heavy, right? But this is exactly where we stop complaining and we start strategizing. You see, most people think the only path to owning a home is saving every single penny from our paychecks until we have this massive mountain of cash. Look, that is the old way, and frankly, in this economy, it's the slow way. The secret we need to master right now isn't just saving, it's understanding a word that sounds a bit scary, but is actually our best friend: leverage. Now, we've all been conditioned to fear debt. Our parents and teachers told us debt is a trap. And when it comes to high-interest credit cards, they were 100% right. But we have to learn the difference between bad debt that drains our bank accounts and good debt that builds our wealth. In the world of real estate, leverage is the engine. It's how we control a massive, appreciating asset without actually having all that cash up front. Let's look at the numbers for a second, because the math doesn't lie. Imagine we want to buy a $400,000 property. If we tried to save that whole amount, we'd be retirement age before we ever even got the keys. But by using an FHA loan or a low down payment program, we can control that entire $400,000 asset with as little as $14,000 of our own money. Think about that for a second. We're only putting down about 3.5%, but we own 100% of the upside. Here is where it gets life-changing, guys. If that house goes up in value by just 5% in a single year, which is a very standard move in the housing market, that house is now worth $420,000. That is a $20,000 gain in our net worth. But remember, we didn't actually spend $400,000. We only put up $14,000. When we do the math, that gain on our investment is a 142% return. We are never going to see those kinds of returns by keeping our money in a basic savings account. This is exactly how we flip the script. This is how we stop being debt slaves and start becoming asset owners. We aren't just buying a place to sleep, right? We are using a financial tool to multiply our wealth while we sleep. We are using the bank's money to build our future. But look, I know what we're all thinking. What about the monthly payments? What if the market dips? Those are the fears that keep 99% of people stuck in the rental cycle forever. However, there is one specific strategy that savvy investors use to make sure their mortgage is covered even if they lose their job. It's the ultimate cheat code for our generation, and once we understand how it works, this unaffordable market starts to look like a massive opportunity. Look, we're not just going to talk about the problem today, we're actually going to execute the playbook together. This is a 4-stage mission to take us from being renters to owners in record time, and it starts right now. Step 1 is what we call the credit launch, right? We have to be honest with ourselves. If our credit score isn't above 680, we are literally leaving massive amounts of money on the table. See, when we're talking about a 30-year loan, every single point counts. A higher score unlocks those bottom-tier interest rates, and honestly, even a 1% difference in our rate can save us over $100,000 in interest over the life of the loan. We need to treat our credit score like our most valuable financial asset because it is the key that opens the vault. Now, step 2 is the 3.5% FHA play. Look, one of the biggest lies we've been told is that we need a 20% down payment to buy a home. I mean, for a $400,000 house, that's $80,000 in cash. Most of us don't have that just sitting around, right? But by using low down payment programs like the FHA loan, we only need 3.5%. That's $14,000 instead of $80,000. We stop waiting for a someday that never comes, and we use the bank's leverage to get our foot in the door today.
Step 3 is where we get truly smart: house hacking. We aren't just buying a home to live in, we're buying an income stream. We look for a property with an extra bedroom to rent out, or even better, a duplex where we live in one side and rent the other. This allows us to let a tenant pay 70%, maybe even 100% of our mortgage. While everyone else is struggling to keep up with rising costs, we're living for nearly free while our tenant builds our equity for us. Finally, step 4 is the 2-year pivot. We stay in that first home for exactly 24 months, okay? This satisfies the primary residence requirement, allowing us to keep our low interest rate and unlock incredible tax benefits when we eventually sell. But here's the kicker. After those 2 years, we don't sell. We turn that first property into a full-time rental and use the same strategy to buy our next one. We're not just buying a house, we're building a portfolio that will fund our entire future. This strategy is the fastest way to build real wealth, but there is one hidden wealth killer that catches 99% of millennials off guard during their first year of ownership. If we don't prepare for this one specific expense, our dream investment can quickly turn into a financial nightmare that drains our savings overnight. However, there's a simple way to calculate this risk before we ever sign a contract. Listen, we have to realize that real estate isn't some sprint to a quick payday. It's a marathon that requires every single one of us to be smart, disciplined, and totally prepared. Look, we simply cannot afford to be reckless with our hard-earned money, right? That's why we always account for the hidden 1%. This is a non-negotiable rule for us. We set aside 1% of the home's total value every single year, strictly for maintenance. I mean, think about it. If we buy a property for $500,000, we need to have $5,000 ready in a dedicated account. Whether it's a leaky roof, a sudden HVAC failure, or a plumbing emergency, these expenses are coming. By planning for them now, we stay in the game while others are forced to sell. Now, when it comes to renting out our property, we must vet our tenants like our financial lives depend on it, because honestly, they absolutely do. Seriously, a bad tenant isn't just a headache, they're a direct threat to our wealth-building journey. We do the background checks, we verify the income, and we never settle for someone just to fill a vacancy. The biggest shift we need to make together is moving away from appreciation hope. We see people buying houses every day, just praying the market goes up 20% so they can feel rich. That's not a strategy, that's a gamble. Instead, we buy for cash flow reality.
If the numbers don't put money in our pockets based on today's interest rates and today's rents, we walk away from the deal. We aren't looking for a trophy to show off, right? We're building an empire of assets, not a collection of liabilities. Intrigued, but even with our risk managed and our cash flow locked in, there is one major factor that determines whether we actually get to keep our wealth or lose it to the taxman. Most people don't even realize how the system is actually designed to help us. But if we miss this one specific legal loophole, we're essentially leaving a fortune on the table for someone else to grab. However, there's a reason the wealthy love this one specific document above all others.
Look, the truth is that legal shield is how the wealthy stay wealthy. But for us to even get to that level, we have to own the asset first. You know, the window for us to enter the real estate market is getting tighter every single day. We see the headlines. Big corporations are buying up single-family homes by the thousands, trying to turn our entire generation into permanent renters. But here's the truth they don't want us to hear. That window is not shut yet. We actually have the tools to beat these corporations at their own game by using FHA programs and first-time buyer incentives that those big hedge funds aren't even allowed to touch. Look at the math. These programs allow us to get into a home with as little as 3.5% down, giving us a massive leverage advantage. Our very first move starts today. We need to pull our credit scores and see exactly where we stand. No more excuses, right? If we don't start building our own equity right now, we are going to spend the rest of our lives building someone else's wealth while they sit back and collect our hard-earned paychecks. We are here to change the blueprint of our lives and take back our future. If you are committed to buying your first property in the next 12 months, I want you to join the movement. Comment the word owner below right now. Let's hold each other accountable and get to work. Make sure to subscribe for more wealth strategies so we can keep building together. We'll see you in the next one.